So, Dr. Swack, where and when were you born?
Do I have to say?
At least tell us your sign, your astrological sign.
Oh, I'm a Cancer.
Okay, and do you identify with that?
No, I really haven't studied that system. I've studied the Enneagram personality system. I haven't really studied astrology. It's on my list of things to do someday.
Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in people's birth order because one author felt like innovative scientists, cutting edge scientists tended to be later born. It's not true for my scientists. What about you, your birth order?
I'm firstborn.
Yeah. And that's what the majority are. I am most of, yeah. And that makes sense because we tend to be achievers, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're the firstborn. Although my siblings are also achievers. We're all the same Enneatype.
Oh, interesting.
All three of us are Enneagram 8s. We had an Enneagram 6 mother. The high side of 6 is helping people reach their full potential.
Mm.
She was an educator. So she made sure from the get-go that we had everything we needed to achieve our full potential in whatever direction we wanted to go in life. And all three of us are top of our field.
Mm. Interesting. And what about, what state were you born in?
Ohio.
Ah. And, oh, that's why you went to Oberlin.
Yeah, I went to Oberlin.
Which is fabulous school, right?
Yeah. It really was a good fit for me.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and then went to Oberlin. And then I got my bachelor. I was pre-med at Oberlin. I got my bachelor's in biology. Then I went to Case Western Reserve and got a master's degree in biochemical research. And then I was tired of Cleveland, so I'm like, I want to get out into the bigger world. I've lived here all my life. And so I moved to Washington, D.C., and eventually I got my Ph.D. at the National Cancer Institute as an external student from the George Washington University. So I take my classes there and do my research at the NIH. And that's how I did my degrees. And my degree was in basically DNA replication, cancer research. But I had fallen in love with immunology back when I was getting my master's degree, and I always wanted to study immunology, become an immunologist. So for my postdoctoral training, I went to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute up here in Boston and did human immunology, postdoc in human immunology at the Dana-Farber and then at the New England Medical Center. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, I was 30 years old working on my PhD, and I was a successful, bright, upcoming scientist, but my love life was a disaster. And I kept attracting the same emotionally unavailable man in different bodies and getting disappointed over and over again. And I couldn't understand, notice where I'm pointing, I couldn't understand why my love life was so dreadful. I'm a very smart woman. Why was my love life so dreadful? And I couldn't figure out how to fix that. So fortunately, one of the men I was dating suggested I take a self-help workshop. So I went and took a workshop called Actualizations, which is similar to EST and LifeSpring and some of those. Mm. And in that workshop, I was introduced to the unconscious mind. So I'm like, oh, that's the answer. It has nothing to do with my conscious intelligence. It has to do with my unconscious mind, which I didn't realize I had one because, of course, I was unconscious of it, hence the name unconscious. And I realized that I needed to heal my unconscious mind if I were to get the results that I wanted in my life. So I asked the leaders of the course, how do you know how to do what you do? And they said, well, we're trained in neuro-linguistic programming. I said, well, then in that case, I'm going to train in neuro-linguistic programming. So I took a 2-semester course, a basic practitioner course in neuro-linguistic programming, and I loved it. I totally understood it. I was able to connect in. I went and found myself a therapist who was trained in neuro-linguistic programming, and we started cleaning the crap out of my unconscious mind, and life got better. You know, I had a really nice boyfriend for many years, and I was doing well at work, so on and so forth. So second semester of the training, at a break, 2 of my classmates approached me and said, "We would like to work with you privately, Judith." And I said, "What are you talking about? I'm a scientist. I work in a lab. I wear a bench coat. I work in a lab. I work with enzymes. Anything larger than an enzyme is too big for me to comprehend. It's too complex for me." And I went like this, like, "Go away." And I said, "Ask the trainers to work with you. They know what they're doing." So this woman folds her arms and she says to me, "No, I want to work with you." And so I feel disoriented and I look at her perplexed and I say, "But I don't even have an office." He said, "I'm trying to comprehend wearing street clothes and having an office." And she says, "Well, you can use my office. I'm a social worker, and you can use my office in the evenings. It's 5 minutes from your apartment. And there you have an office. And furthermore, my husband, who's a chiropractor who shares the office suite, he wants to work with you too." So now I'm like, okay. And then this man says, "And not only do I want to work with you, but I'm divorced and my teenage son is living with me, and he would like to work with you."
Wow.
So now I'm standing there. I was handed 4 clients and an office 5 minutes from my house, and they're standing there like this. No, they're not going away. So I stop and I sort of tune in, and I'm thinking, I'm really good at what I do. I'm really good at this.
With enzymes.
With NLP.
Ah.
And, you know, we've been practicing on each other. Obviously, I've been getting good results with them. Obviously, they know my work. So I thought, okay, I answered the call. It was a very loud call, right?
4 people, yes.
Yeah, 4 people in an office 5 minutes from my house, even after I said no a couple of times and went shoo.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So I shrugged and I said, all right, I'll do it. We'll see how it goes. And I go like this. So they came to see me. I worked with them. They got very good results. They sent their friends. Suddenly I had this. So I saw 2 clients a week in the evenings. And then by day, I was a bench scientist. And by evening, I was a mind-body healer. Right? But because I'm a scientist, of course, I would track results. I'd follow up and track results over time. And of course, continuing education is a good thing. So when I moved to Boston, I figured out where the NLP community was. I started working with an NLP therapist here, and he taught the master practitioner training. So I got my master practitioner certification in NLP and continued my practice up here. So by day, I was postdocing in human immunology at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and by night, I was healing people with NLP, right? So in my master practitioner training, we did a section on phobias, and my trainer basically brought in Callahan's first book, The 5-Minute Phobia Cure, because that it had come out that year. And he said, we're going to teach this technique as part of our training. So we all read the book and we started tapping. So I started tapping in 1986. I was there at the beginning of that field. And so the rest is history. Now, I had a client come in who told me that she knew a woman who got me through her stuff faster than I did. And I'm like, no. And she just so happened to be teaching a class in 2 weeks And I signed up immediately, and I was introduced to Mary Louise Mueller. And Mary Louise Mueller was trained in craniosacral polarity therapy and applied kinesiology, none of which I'd heard of. And she taught us muscle testing. And she taught us how to talk to the soul. And the soul leads the healing through muscle testing. So from that day forward, I never went back. I never went back. In healing from the body level up, which I basically put together from all of these trainings, I figured out that we had a soul and it's in a body. We have an unconscious mind, which I learned about quite early. And we have a conscious mind that doesn't know all that much. What can I say? Even though it thinks it's everything.
Right.
I call it conscious mind chauvinism, and I warn people about that. No, be careful about that. So I put together this model of reality that has a soul and a body, and then, of course, I had to think about why is the soul in the body, because scientists think about everything in questions. I gave it some deep thought. About 7 years later, I came up with the idea that we're here to do a soul mission and make a contribution. And so we want to make a difference in the physical world. We need to be physical to do it. So I call it soul throughput. And also to live a full life. You know, we're humans, have a human life. If we were a dog, we'd have a dog's life. If we were a bacteria on Mars, we'd have a bacteria on Mars life, but have that life.
Yeah.
So then I assumed that if something isn't working in some area of your life, health, money, career, soul mission, relationships, spirituality, something's not working somewhere, there must be something interfering with you. There must be a pattern interfering. And so the question became, what's interfering with you? So then I spent, decades studying the types of patterns that interfere with you. So anything from, life experience damage, from this life, from past lives, from your ancestry, phobias, traumas, limiting beliefs, bad habits, dysfunctional family system crap, right? It interferes with you. And it doesn't interfere necessarily at the conscious level. It interferes at the body level or the unconscious level. And here's the key. Feelings, okay, it all comes down to energy, right? So feelings have energy. Thoughts do not have energy. So feelings run behavior. And the more strongly you feel something, the more it drives your behavior. So what you see is people consciously know better than to do something, and they do it anyway.
Like become 300 pounds by eating too much.
Exactly. So as they're binge eating, their conscious mind is saying, I know I shouldn't do this. This is bad for me. They maybe even be yelling and swearing and shouting at themselves. Stop this right now, you blah, blah, blah. While they're physically shoveling it in. Right? So who's running the show? Not the conscious mind that knows better, but whatever craving, whatever addiction, whatever emptiness is requiring some kind of answer is running the show. So I call that a misalignment of the levels. Your conscious mind knows better, but you're driven by your unconscious mind that's sabotaging you. So I call it unconscious self-sabotage, just as a general category.
Or it's called psychological reversal, PR.
That could be true.
Just another name for it.
Mm-hmm. That's another name for it. So basically, I mapped the patterns. Then I found that you can have personality distortions, like ego distortion, which doesn't come from life experience damage. And again, I use the Enneagram model of personality, and which I discovered through muscle testing is downloaded at conception. It doesn't develop during life experience. It's downloaded at conception, whole cloth, and it's your operating system.
Do you think it's your karmic inheritance from past lives, your soul, so to speak?
No, that's past life stuff. and that's in the category of life experience damage. This is your Enneagram wound, which your Enneagram programming, which is purely your operating system and is not related to any kind of life experience.
What determines it?
I don't know how you get assigned an Enneatype. That's one of the questions I'm still wondering about.
I think it's just what are karmically what we bring in as a personality.
What I have discovered through doing past life work is that you have one soul mission, and it's the same soul mission every lifetime. Just how you do it, how you perform it, depends on the hand of cards that you've been dealt. So every lifetime you have a body. It could be a different gender each lifetime. I've been like half the time I've been a man, half the time I've been a woman in the last 6 lifetimes that I remember. And then, you know, where are you located? What kind of resources do you have? What family did you choose? What capabilities do you have? What are your genetics lending you? You know, you get a whole bunch of cards in your hand. And then I say you want to play to the strength of your hand. And then you want to compensate for the weaknesses. Right? So you've been dealt this hand. So then you play out your soul mission with this hand that you've been dealt. But it's the same soul mission, but the specifics of how you do it differ by lifetime. However, what I found was that the Enneatype is the Enneatype. It's the same in everybody. The same programming, the same code. Each Enneagram type is programmed the exact same way, regardless of what their soul mission is, regardless of what their past lives were.
So you're saying all 8s, like you used to be, will have certain characteristics?
Yes, indeed. And the programming is the same and can be upgraded the same way.
But
so
you also said that you can evolve or expand out of it. You're not...
Yes, I figured out how to do that.
And how did you do that?
Well, I was working with a partner. His name is Andy Hahn, and he's an Enneagram 4, and he basically taught me the Enneagram system by getting a group of people together. And for 2 years, we would meet once a week, and we'd had a pair of each type, male and female, and each week we would talk about our point of view on a subject.
Cool.
So that you really got to experience the different points of view and the different ways that they reacted to things, and really get an internal sense of the type. And after a couple of years, somebody said to him, well, Andy, you know, we have these bugs in our operating system, and okay, we understand it, but we're still struggling with these compulsions and these distorted lenses, and what do we do about that? So Andy said, well, I don't know, let me think about it. So Andy had studied with Thich Nhat Hanh and a bunch of spiritual leaders, and he thought about it for about 3 weeks, and one day he was meditating, and it came to him the idea of walking through the void. Like you have to address your shadow self, and you have to walk through the void. So he came up with a process that he called the essence process, which basically is that you tune into your wound of your personality, which is made of fear and shame, by the way, and you interview it. You stay in higher consciousness and you interview it without getting attached. It's just a program, although it has a lot of energy and you thought it was real, and it runs you from the inside like a puppet and owns your sorry ass. But nonetheless, you come up to higher consciousness and you go, oh, I see what the lens here is. I see what the distortion is. I see how it's been running me. Oh, isn't that interesting? Once you do that, you can actually take the energy out of your body, literally pull it out with your hands, you plop it on the floor in front of you, and you pull out all the life experience damage that fed the story and made it feel real. See, that's where it intersects. Plop it on the floor, and then you radiate it with your soul energy. Again, it's quantum physics.
Wow.
So ego vibrates at a lower frequency than soul. So you pull it all out, you radiate it throughout to infinity. That's the essence process, and you release it. And by the way, I have a series of videos upgrading the most aggravating layers of code for each of the 9 types. You can get that on my website. And
what's it called, that video?
It's called something about the essence process. Like, I think it's the Enneagram and the essence process. I'd have to look it up. And there's a free video, and then you can buy the series. The free video is the upgrade on the Enneagram 2, 3s, and 4s, which are the image points. We upgrade the void, invisible, needy layer of the image points. That's the layer of code that makes them vulnerable to everybody's opinion of them. Makes me happy to upgrade that, because once you do that, you have boundaries and you're not at the mercy of everybody's opinion of you. So I put that out for free because I think it's like, tragic. So he figured out how to do it, and then I'm the scientist, so I mapped the procedure, and I made it, I made a linear procedure, and then I mapped the layers of code. So I now have 600 pages of diagrams of specific layers of code for each type.
So the code has to do with how to pull the energy out of the stuck part of the code. So you have freedom.
Yes. We call it something like release yourself from the tyranny of ego. Release the compulsion. These are the most compulsive structures ever. So we figured out how to upgrade personality structure, and that was a big piece.
Oh, that's huge.
That was really huge. And so the people that I train know how to do that. And again, I've diagrammed the code, so all you have to do is muscle test and see which layer of code is causing this problem for you. You open it up, you read it, you go, oh, yeah, that's the code. I see it running. I see how I've been distorting through this. I get it. You pull it out of you. You recycle the energy. And the purified energy comes back to you, has a mind of its own, integrates into your body, adds muscle to your soul, and does something else for you completely. So in terms of recycling energy, it's bang for the buck. It's huge.
Could you give an example from your own personal experience or a client's of what the code was and how you pulled it out?
Yes, the void, invisible, needy layer. The central identity. So a layer of code has two sections to it. It has a central identity, which has a negative story that claims to be the only truth about you, the universe, everybody, and God. And furthermore, you're the only person in the whole universe who this horrible thing is true about, don't you know? So that runs you. You think that's who you are. Then, by the same token, you have a compensating energy, which is the equal and opposite energy. So it looks like a coin with two faces. This energy could be in the same place in your body. It could be a different place. So this energy says, no, that's not me. I'm the opposite. I'm fabulous. And I'm going to work really hard to prove how fabulous I am. And I'm going to, get rid of you. All right. So now you have two energies, opposing energies, that are really the flip side of the same coin. One energy divided in half and fighting against itself. Nice, huh?
Takes a lot of energy.
Oh, you bet. Now, this one compensates by being arrogant, obviously. No, I'm fabulous. Or by using other people to prove your point. I'm going to prove my point. Or by avoiding the issue. I'm going to just avoid it. Or by justifying it, trying to spin it into something positive. Or miscellaneous strategies depending on the layer of code and the type. So the energy, again, is made of fear and shame, right? So when you interview the positive side and you ask it what's its worst fear is, no matter what I do to prove it's wrong, I'm going to fail, and the real me is going to slip out, and it's horrible. And so this is the only truth. It's right. And this one laughs at this side and goes, ha, ha, ha. Anything you do to prove me wrong is nothing but a fraud and a sham, because see above, I'm the only truth. Ha. All right, and we're run by that. And so, one layer of code, and I've done like 350 layers of code in myself. Just one layer. The void, invisible, needy layer. It's a full body energy. And the central ID says, I'm not even here. I don't even exist. And the 2s, 3s, and 4s, they will describe it as, I feel like a ghost. I'm not even solid. I have no substance. People can't see me. They can walk right through me. I'm not really here. So, of course, that's a full body void. Now, nature abhors a vacuum, yes?
Right.
So the compensating energy has to fill the void. Now we have a problem. We have two problems. Number one, empty. I'm empty and needy, full body. And number two, I'm invisible. I can't be seen. So the compensating energy has to get you seen and filled. See the problem here? So the way the Enneagram 2s, also known as the helper givers, get seen and filled is they do things for you. They help you. So they can't see, nobody can see you if you're just standing there. But if you do something for somebody, then they will see that you did something for them and they will see you. And not only that, they will appreciate, hopefully, what you did for them, and they will fill your void with appreciation.
Those are the codependents.
Those are the codependents. That's right. Mm-hmm. So that would be an example. So these people don't take care of themselves. They're always running after somebody else to take care of them. They're always complaining that they can't do enough to please people and that nobody appreciates them, and they get grudgy and bitter and resentful.
And Barbara Stone says she's a 2 and she got breast cancer.
Well, there you have it. Okay. So now, in reality, they're not a ghost. They are physically real. You can poke them. You're here. I can feel you. Poke, poke. And you need to balance taking care of yourself with taking care of others. And not using taking care of people to manipulate them into giving you something back, because it comes out as manipulative and guilt-producing and so on and so forth. So what we do is we know that I'm void, invisible, needy is full body. So we pull that out, bang. And then we pull out, I give to get. And that could be full body also. Okay, I take care of everybody else. I expect them to appreciate me. I manipulate. I guilt trip. Right? Because I have to prove how generous I am so nobody will think I'm needy by being all about you and giving to you. And then, you wouldn't think I'm needy, but you'll appreciate me. You'll feed me back. And then they lament that nobody takes care of them the way they take care of people, and nobody is as thoughtful and generous as they are back. Okay, so anyway, that whole story goes on the floor. Bang.
But how do you pull it out? Do you just use intention?
My hands go like this.
Just with intention.
I use my hands.
Yeah. And intention.
I guess so. Okay, I'm pulling this out now.
You're kinesthetic, right?
I am. I'm kinesthetic.
Yeah.
So, or if it's a full body thing, I say to people, well, put your hands above your head and literally push this thing down, push it out of you and out your feet. Now, I do have people who are very good at visualizing, and they just visualize pushing it out. But I'm very sort of kinesthetic, so I physically do it.
Yeah.
Regardless, the energy comes from here and goes there.
Got it.
And then I say, step away from the pile. Step away, and I go, how do you feel over here minus that? And they're like, I feel hugely better. I feel lighter. I feel the weight is lifted off me. I'm like, okay, good. Then we muscle test to confirm that it's gone, it's out. Then I say, what does the energy look like? They'll describe it. I'll say, okay, now, notice that around this energy is the rest of the real universe. Yay. An infinite space without boundary or dimension and consisting of an infinite variety of forms of matter and energy, including this one. And they go, yeah, okay, good. Phew, reality is much better than the story. Right? And then they radiate it. And they radiate right through it out to infinity and raise the I'd say it's like microwaving ice cubes or something. You raise the vibration, it becomes gas. You go out to infinity. Or you think quantum physics and you just radiate and turn the physical into waveforms, just pure energy waveforms. And you radiate out to infinity in all directions. And the the released energy integrates back into your body, has a mind of its own, goes somewhere, and does something for you. So after I say, just let me know when you reach infinity. So they're going like this, and then they go, okay, I'm there. And then we muscle test. I say, do you see anything left of the original? Nope, that's gone. And have you fully reintegrated the energy? Yes. And where is it in your body? Well, I feel a vibration in my stomach now. We muscle test. Is that where it is? Yep. I go, all right, well, and what's it going to do for you now? And then it says, we muscle test, is that right? And that's what the energy is going to be used for now.
Say a word about muscle testing, because one time I saw a video that was never repeated where David Feinstein did a little study of different practitioners muscle testing, and they didn't get the same results. So it's very subjective, especially if people don't test in the clear, because we know we can get switched and muscle test the opposite of what's true. So how do you ensure that muscle testing isn't, someone is reversed, stuck, the meridians are frozen, they're reversed? How do you deal with that?
Well, actually, I gave that seminar for the last 2 years in a row at CAIET and at ASEP because it was aggravating me that people didn't know how to muscle test properly. So the first thing you need to know is muscle testing is always accurate. You need to know what you're seeing. So I have an intake form with 125 questions, and the first 10 questions on my intake form are what I call a system check to make sure that the system is working properly so we can get accurate answers.
Are you thirsty? Are you tired? Are you stressed?
I checked that first. That's not even here. That's just your basic standard system check. Like show me a yes, show me a no, pull on your hair, zip up, zip down. I check just the system. But then once I can get a muscle test. Now, if people are strong on yes and strong on no on the muscle test, and 25% of my people who come in are, it's because they are having a phobia. It's a phobia. Straight up.
Wow.
So I ask them to do a head-to-foot scan. I call it an emotional CAT scan. I say, where's the fear in your body? I have them read what a phobia is. I have them write out the phobia, interview this part, write it out. That's NLP, right? Talk to the part of you that. And then we do what I call natural biodistressing, which is a form of EFT. Just clear it. And then I recheck them. Now are they testing? So basically, the first thing I do is I check to see if they have any phobias blocking their energy field. And that's the most important thing to treat anyway. They just showed you what the major issue is. They walked in and handed it to you. Unfortunately, many people get into this thing about, oh, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm incompetent because I can't muscle test my client. No, it's not about you, the therapist. It's about the client is showing you something. Step in. So what they're showing you is they have a phobia. Now, once we clear the phobias and we get a clean yes and no, see, anything other than this is yes and this is no, strong on yes, weak on no, anything other than that is a phobia. It doesn't matter. If they're reversed, it's still a phobia. If they're double weak, it's still a phobia. If they're double strong, it's still a phobia. It's a phobia. So that's my original finding. That's my research. And so I've been teaching people. And in my training, my Module 1 training, I spent an entire day on muscle testing and clearing phobias so that they will be able to muscle test. And usually if somebody's blocked, it can take one session to unblock them. Just, maybe they could have 2 or 3 phobias that are blocking them. The longest it ever took me to unblock somebody so I could get a muscle test was 12 sessions.
Wow. What was their phobia or phobias?
Well, I'm going to say one thing. This was a Pakistani Muslim woman living in Pakistan. Do I need to say much more? So the reason that she contacted me was because she had pain in every cell of her body, and she couldn't get down on her knees 5 times a day to say her prayers. So that was pretty horrifying. So I was doing the standing tilt with her, and this is by phone, obviously, because she was in Pakistan. So on the standing tilt, you stand up, you face north, and you ask your body to show a yes, and you tilt forward. Ask your body to show a no, you tilt back. Guess what? She didn't move. That's the equivalent of double strong.
Right.
She didn't move on yes, she didn't move on no. 12 sessions later, she finally moved. So every day I would say, okay, where in your body is the fear? And she would say, oh, my stomach or my head or something. And then I'd say, and what's the phobia? And then some memory would pop up, some horrifying memory would pop up that I had to tap on myself a couple of times, the garbage that she experienced as a Pakistani woman. It was pretty shocking, cultural to me. And so we would tap that out. So finally, after 12 sessions of, okay, now what's popping up? Oh, now what's popping up? She tilted forward on yes and backwards on no. And if she hadn't been Muslim, I would have suggested that we break out the champagne. It's like, hey. But the funny thing is, she said, oh, by the way, all the pain is gone from my body after the first 6 sessions. I said, really? Why didn't you tell me? Well, you were so determined to unblock me that I just thought I'd go along with it. But the pain went away 6 sessions ago. I'm like, all right then.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Do you teach people to muscle test themselves?
I do.
What technique did you like for yourself?
The standing tilt. I find that the standing tilt is the most accurate. If I'm sitting down, I do a finger test. I pretend this is a mini arm, and I press with my middle finger. Body show us a yes, body show us a no.
Yeah,
so I'll use that for myself. But if I want to be sure, I'll stand up. And then to double check it, I'll put my arms out and have my husband muscle test me. Hey, honey. I'll follow him around. Hey, check me. I'm working on stuff.
Yeah, good.
So
do you think muscle testing is tapping into the unconscious mind? Is that what exactly is it?
No, I'm sending it to the soul, which is not the same as the unconscious mind. And we direct the questions. In healing from the body level up, let me give you the structure of it. So we muscle test and we correct the body so that we know we're getting accurate answers. We clear the blocks from the energy field. And there's several more questions that we ask. For example, I muscle test and ask, is there any interference to your conscious mind accessing your unconscious mind? Yes or no. Is there any interference to your conscious mind accessing your body? Is there any interference to your conscious mind accessing your personality structure? Is there any interference to your conscious mind accessing your soul? I want to know that we have full conscious access. If we're going to be working these levels, we have to have full conscious access. So if they muscle test, they do not have full conscious access, I ask if that's the next thing we need to treat. And if they don't have full conscious access, it's usually only one of 2 things. They either have a phobia, sound familiar? Or it's a limiting belief, which in either case can be written down and tapped out with tapping. So once we've done the system check, right, I also check to see if their soul is 100% integrated into their body. Because if we're muscle testing, or if you're using the body to access the soul and the soul's not in there, then what are you getting? See, I think about these things, right? So I do a serious system check. I want to make sure the soul's integrated in the body. We have full access to all the levels. And then I check things like, do you have any phobias of truth? Any phobias of admitting you have a problem, right? Because I want to work with them on the real issue. If there's all these little blocks. No, I just want to get there. Let's clear away this. Let's open the system. Let's get clear access, right? So I actually ask these questions, and this is like the first 15 questions on my intake form. I call it system check. So once we get the system going and all the levels are connected, we can communicate, and there's no holding back, and this and that. And we are talking, and the soul is in the body, then we direct all of the questions to the soul.
Oh.
So in HBLU, the soul leads the healing. And we use muscle testing to get the readout from the soul. Now, if we want to talk to the unconscious mind, we can direct the question to the unconscious mind. From your deepest wisdom, which is your soul, is there a part of you at the unconscious level that's running this pattern? From your deepest wisdom, is there a part of you at the body level that's running this pattern? Right. But I'm talking to the soul. But let's say we're doing a physical injury. And let's say it's their toe. So I'll muscle test. Body. I'll just say body. Is there physical injury trauma to your soul, to the toe? Body, is there physical injury trauma to the toe? And if it says yes, I go, hey, toe. Now I'm muscle testing and talking to the toe. Toe. Right? So you can direct the questions.
Yeah.
So the way that healing from the body level works is, and this is what I call the standard balance protocol. We ask the client to go in and ask their soul what's the highest priority goal. It might be make more money, release excess weight and keep it off, get happily married, change careers.
The usual.
The usual. And get divorced easily and gracefully. Right? Minimum of drama. So we muscle test and ask, is that right? From your deepest wisdom. And if it's right, we check the wording of it. We write it on the board. That's the goal. Then we ask for permission. From your deepest wisdom, does this being, and notice I say being, because we're talking about this multi-level being. And if you said, do you, the conscious mind would probably answer.
Right.
And that's not who I'm talking to.
Got it.
So from your deepest wisdom, is this the priority goal? Yes or no? And does this being give 100% permission to balance for this goal? Yes or no? And is there any reason not to do this? Yes or no? So I do 2 permission checks. And then if we have permission, then I ask, what is the percentage negative emotional charge on the goal? It's kind of like a SUDS measure.
Got it.
So I want to know how much blockage there is on the goal to start with. And then once we get that, I say, and what is the priority interference on the goal? And then I go through the patterns on my intake form. And then I have 6 modules, each with more complex patterns. So is it a module 6 pattern, a module 5 pattern, a module 4 pattern, a module 3 pattern, a module 2 pattern, a module 1 pattern, anything on the small supernatural list.
So a pattern could be parents discounted my abilities or something.
Yes. Yes. And, or it could be a phobia, or it could be a grudge, or it could be
a curse.
Yeah. Because, again, healing from the body level up. We clear life experience damage, we upgrade personality, and I forgot to mention, we clear external interference. External interference can be in the form of natural disasters. You didn't create that, but it is interfering with you from the outside. Or it could be nasty people with free will, because, we can't control other people's behavior, although all of us wish we could. Or supernatural entities, ghosts, demons, curses, things like that, right?
People who are dead and haven't passed over and are stuck.
Yeah, that would be a ghost.
Ghost.
Yep. So, right. And then, of course, whatever I find is the priority interference pattern. I have a protocol for it. And I also have a menu of 52 techniques. So basically, I have NLP techniques. As you know, I started out with that. Then energy psychology techniques, applied kinesiology techniques I learned from Mary Louise Mueller. And then I added shamanic techniques and prayer techniques, and then energy transmission techniques like Reiki and Qigong and pranic healing and some of those energies, transmission. And then I also have on my menu things that I don't do, but I refer. I check to see if they need chiropractic, surgery, acupuncture, nutrition. Now, if they need some nutrition, remember, I have a Ph.D. in biochemistry. So I can do some of the, easy nutrition stuff. But if they need cancer nutrition or or autoimmune disease nutrition, I refer them to a professional nutritionist. Right. For, that kind of stuff.
Do you find that your clients are mostly women? Because it seems like any helping professions, mostly women take advantage.
Nope. I would say a good third of my clients are men. Really. Who come in voluntarily. They're not just, forced by their wives.
Maybe what they like is they don't have to just sit and talk.
That's what they all say.
They don't have to spill their guts, they would say.
No,
yeah.
They come in, they like that it's quick, it removes the problem, they don't have to cope with it, they just clear it out, it's gone, they're done, efficient, fixed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really like this. And even the ones who are forced to come in because their wives threaten to divorce them if they don't, when they come in, I look them in the face, I go, I understand that you're here because your wife will divorce you if you're not, but regardless of what she wants you to work on, we're going to talk to your deepest wisdom, and it leads to healing. So it doesn't really matter what anybody else wants. Once you're in here, your deepest wisdom leads to healing and sets the goals. And then they all sigh.
Relief.
And then it's interesting because pretty much most of the time, their highest priority goal has to do with their business. It doesn't have to do with their relationship.
Because it's their manhood, is their ability to take care of their family. We identify manliness that way.
Well, whatever it is, they're not happy with their business. They're not making enough money. They're having troubles with personnel that are aggravating them. They need to make business decisions. They took too many risks. I had somebody come in whose wife said she was driving him crazy because he took too many risks. So his income looked like this. This is the grid. It looked like this. I said to him, guess what? We're going to balance you to have an income that looks like this. And we did. We actually, because you can measure these things. I love to measure things being a scientist. So 6 months later, his income was like this. There were no dips, no nothing.
What did you find was his limiting belief that made him take those risks?
Well, it wasn't a limiting belief. It turns out he was an Enneagram 7. And the Enneagram 7s take risks.
They like to have fun.
They like to have fun and they like to take risks and have adventures.
Yeah.
So what would happen was some opportunity would come up that sounded fun and appealing, and he would go invest in it. And, and it would not work out.
So how did you clear that?
Well, of course, it was another layer of code. It had a central ID and a compensating energy, and we processed it by pulling it out, plopping it on the floor, and irradiating it, and recycling the energy. It was just a different layer of code, and that took care of that.
So he could retain his sense of fun and adventure without imposing it on his business decisions.
Yes, actually, that's an interesting point, because some of the compensating strategies are skills that people develop to compensate. And when you recycle the energy of the pattern, you get to keep the skills and abilities that you develop to compensate. But you still do what you would do. Like the helper givers, they still help, but they don't do it at their own expense. But they like to help people, but they feel good about it. They're not compelled to do it to fill a void. They do it because they really love helping people, and they get appreciated, and they can receive it, and it registers on them because they're not void, invisible, and needy, and it's not like a drop in the bucket. It actually registers because now they're solid.
Got it. I wanted to ask you, because I've done a lot of research on youth and global youth and written books about it, and there's increasing numbers, especially of girls, who are anxious and depressed. And I wondered if you treat adolescents and if you have an explanation for why there's such a big increase in anxiety and depression, especially girls.
Well, I have a video. I did an interview with a cable television interviewer. She had a cable TV show. And we called it something like Stopping the... God, my memory's not working today. We're going to have to cut and paste this. So it was called Ending the Culture of Abuse. And it's a half hour long. And what I basically said was, the reason that there's so much abuse of women is because there's a cultural brainwashing pattern. And I call it the gender toxic belief system, or the gender overtangle. I've named it an overtangle. But it's a toxic belief system. And it's like a thought virus. And the message that's contaminated and polluted humanity is women are inferior to men. Now, let's look at 5,000 years of recorded history, and you see that belief poisoning the collective. Now, let's look at this for real. Is it true that women are inferior to men? Absolutely not. It's a lie. But this lie has been solidified into reality through laws, religious rules, and cultural norms. And why is it evil? It's evil because it prevents people, men and women, from achieving their full potential based solely on the gender of the body their soul entered.
Right.
Are you kidding me? Right? So I've been watching really the history, and it's started to be reversed. In order to reverse these big things, and I'm still working on just being able to clear it energetically out of the collective. I haven't figured out how to do that. I'm still working on it. I can take it out of individuals. But right now, to clear a toxic belief system like that out of the collective, you have to have enough people who aren't infected with it and don't believe in it come together and then fight it and finally create a tipping point where there's enough people who don't believe it that it basically tips the other way.
Right.
And then this finally drains. So this particular toxic belief system started to tip with the French Revolution.
Mm.
So that's in the 1800s, because the idea of the French Revolution was liberty, equality, and fraternity, like brotherhood, right? So, and so they were overthrowing the monarchs, and they were trying to create a democracy, and so on and so forth. Of course, there's a lot of blood and guts on that one. But the founders of the United States were inspired by that. So they came over here, and the Constitution, all men are created equal, except they said men. Now, the idiots took it literally. They didn't just think, oh, this was English usage, meaning human. They thought it meant literally men. So then what happened? So we got freedom over here, but just for men. Mostly white men, as it were.
Yes.
So women weren't allowed to vote and all this other business. So then, in England, around 18-something, 1880, something like that, I'm not a historian, so I don't know exact dates, the suffragette movement in England, right? So
U.S. 1846, First Women's Rights Conference. So I think it was probably about then in England, too.
Sweet. So the English women finally got the vote. And then, of course, there was Susan B. Anthony and the movement here in the United States, and they had to make a amendment to the Constitution to give women the right to vote, which is ridiculous, but anyway. But you know something? In order to get that to happen, they beat up and jailed and tortured a lot of women. Like, they were physically violent to these people. So, okay, so fast forward. Then we hit the World War II, where all the men went off to the war, so they needed women to work. So then women came out and showed what they could do. And then the men came back and wanted their jobs back. So then they put out this propaganda that women's place is in the home.
Feminine mystique.
Yeah.
Friedan.
Exactly. But that didn't actually hold up. So then we got to the 60s and women's lib and so on and so forth. And we got to the 80s and the ERA, which didn't pass. But anyway, but then now we're at equal pay for equal work. And now sexual inappropriateness is flagged, prosecuted, and not okay.
The Me Too movement.
The Me Too movement, exactly. And now that's rippled out into the LGBTQ whatever. Now it's equal rights for all people regardless of gender or gender identification or whatever. So that's really a positive effect. So I've been watching this for a couple hundred years at this point, start to tip it, even though nobody will elect a woman president of the United States. But we're starting to see women being elected in other countries. And so, there's still a lot of work. It's so time consuming. I wish I could just go like this and just dissolve, just dissolve it, disinfect the collective. So we've got young women. It's been my impression, because I've been working with children, that the children who are coming in now are a higher consciousness. They're coming in. They don't want to be contaminated by this garbage. They can see it. And I'm thinking that's causing some of their angst.
Ah, that's interesting.
Right? It's like, why is this still here? They're coming. Why is this still here? They look at the generation before this. Why haven't you cleaned this up yet?
Why are you destroying our planet?
Yeah, why are you destroying our planet? Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's what's happening.
I also think that the women's movement meant that girls think they have to be attractive, get 4.5 so they can get into a good college, so they can get a good job, so they can pay for their $40,000 in student loans or whatever. So and a lot of them, they're working and plus doing school activities. So there's just a lot of pressure to conform to some ideal feminine figure. You have to be Superwoman.
Yeah, because it's swung the other way. Right? Women are, but you see, it's still a reaction. Because if they're trying to prove that they're just as good, if not better than men, then they're in reaction. It's not, here, I'm a person, I want to get this degree, I want to do this, No, if they're still doing this in reaction and comparing themselves, they're still in the pattern and infected with it.
Right, I agree. I want to go back to your childhood, because I'm really interested in what allows scientists like you to go against the norm. Because you must have gotten flack from science colleagues. What are you doing, this pseudoscience, metaphysical, woo-woo stuff? How could you do such crazy stuff? Do you get that have you gotten that kind of flack?
Yeah. I've been doing this for 38 years at this point, and I used to teach this stuff I still teach this stuff at community education. So I was teaching tapping at community education, and maybe 20, 25 years ago, I was teaching people how to clear phobias with tapping, and people would come in and they'd be hostile. That's ridiculous. How is tapping on your base going to release trauma? That's ridiculous. And I get this kind of hostility. I taught a day-long course on trauma and using tapping to clear trauma, because I mapped the structure of trauma, and I published that paper in, I think, 1993. Anyway, the first time I presented it at the BU School of Social Work, people were so flabbergasted at the end that they didn't know what to say, so they gave me like the highest marks for nose for subject and fascinating, but then they had to make critical comments because they were just so flabbergasted, like, why did she wear purple? No, really, they had nothing to say. Or she's not a social worker. How is she presenting at the social work school? I mean, they had nothing to say. So they were just so flabbergasted.
People don't like their worldviews shaken up.
Yeah, well, I'm good at that.
Okay, so what was there about your family background that led you to be a Ph.D. scientist and a chemist? And we know you're a firstborn. We know your mother was an educator who encouraged her kids. What else gave you this courage and drive?
Well, I mean, I had allergies when I was a kid, so I would go up the street. My cousin was an endocrinologist, And I just walk up the street to his office every week and get allergy shots. He would give me the allergy shots, and I'd have to sit there and wait for 15 minutes to make sure I didn't have a reaction. And his wife was his lab tech, so I was waiting there. She'd show me slides, like blood smears with bacteria in it, or urine with bacteria in it, or blood with white cells and red cells. And, I just thought it was so fascinating. I always liked science. It was my favorite class. And I decided then I was going to be a doctor.
That's why you were pre-med.
Yeah, like my cousin. So I decided I was going to be a doctor. But people would always come out of the woodwork and talk to me about their problems. When you're a healer, you sort of radiate and people can feel it unconsciously. So I'd be 13 years old. I'd be on the bus with my flute, going to my flute lesson, and somebody would sit down beside me invariably and just initiate a conversation about their trauma. And I'm 12 and 13 years old, holding my flute, and they're talking. And I'd look over at them and listen to them, and maybe make a comment or two, and think, well, that's weird. But it seemed quite normal. Like people always did this. Come and tell me their traumas. But I didn't really think of myself, and of course I've been psychic since the get-go, but my mom is psychic and my dad admitted he was psychic too, so we always had those abilities, so we didn't really think anything of that per se. So it really wasn't until I was called in my NLP class to work with people individually that I really thought, oh, I'm a healer, because I was going to be a scientist and I was going to be an immunologist. And I really had this vision of having my own lab and doing world-class immunology research and expanding the field and so on and so forth. So I really thought that my healing business was a side business. But then I met my husband, and 3 months in, he calls me on the phone fainting because he had a phobia of blood, and he was cleaning his bathroom, and apparently he'd cut his finger as he was, washing the faucet. And I said, oh, now this was, 1986, and I had just learned the tapping technique. So I said to him, oh, well, just tap under your eyes and tap the armpit points, because those are the only 2 points known at that point. And then tap the back of your hand, 9 gamut. And then do this again. How do you feel now? He goes, oh my God, I feel so much better. This is amazing. So he comes over and he says, this is amazing. You can cure phobias in minutes. This is amazing. You need to take this seriously, he says to me. And you need to do this for a living. And I'm going to quit my job. And I'm going to help you start this business. And you got to take this seriously.
Wow.
I know. I married that man.
Yeah. What's his Enneagram type?
He's a 9.
So easygoing.
Yeah, very easygoing, very supportive. So again, the 8 and the 9 both got points, getting it done. He's the wind beneath my wings, as it were, right? He keeps me going. So I said to him, okay, listen, that's very nice, but what do you really want to do? And he said, well, I like computer programming. I said, all right, listen, I'll take the business seriously. I will, hire somebody to do the business part. You'll do my tech stuff, my computer and tech stuff, and we'll take it from there. But in the meantime, so we got married, got a house, and I was still working. I finished my postdoctoral training, and I got a job in industry so we could make money and buy a house. And then I had a baby. So then it came to the point where I'm like, oh, at that point, I was seeing 6 clients a week, 2 in the evening, 4 on Saturdays, and working a full-time job in industry. And then I had a baby. So I came to a crossroads because I couldn't do all 3 things. Mm-hmm. I couldn't do that. No, I have a baby. She's like the most important thing. So I asked my deepest wisdom, where is the totality of me best going to serve the universe? And I thought they can hire another biochemist, but there aren't too many people who've developed a mind-body healing methodology that works reproducibly and can be taught. So I guess I'm going to do this full time. So I said to my husband, I'm going to quit my job and I need to do this full time, but I'm frightened. What if I fail? And he said, well, give it a year, and then if that doesn't work, get another job. He's so down to earth. Okay, fine, give it a shot and get another job. I'm like, of course. So several of my clients were businesswomen, and so I put together a board of advisors, and we sat down. We had some meetings, and I said, how should I organize this? And I had been doing this part-time for 12 years, so I had a backlog of clients who, couldn't get in, and they wanted to send their friends. And so I just basically put together an office and got, an infrastructure and positioning and so on and so forth. And then I just sent out a letter to all of my clients saying, good news, I've opened my practice. You can send your friends now. and I gave a couple of seminars at these women's homes. They invited their friends. And within 3 months, I went from 6 clients a week to 20 clients a week.
Wow.
And then the rest was history. But I always took Mondays off to be with Laura. So Mondays was Mommy and Laura Day.
Wonderful.
And it wasn't grocery shopping day or catching up on something day. It was Mommy and Laura Day. Devoted. And then as she went to school, I put in clients in the morning until, but whenever she was available on Monday, that was her time.
What did she major in college?
She went to Cornell University, and she went to the ILR school, which is Industrial and Labor Relations.
Yeah.
So it's like
being a lawyer.
It's like being a lawyer or a HR, person or an organizational development person, like a business person from the humanistic point of view. And not only that, but she became the 3rd woman in history to be the president of the Student Agencies Incorporated. They have 7 student businesses called Student Agency Incorporated, and she became the president of all 7 businesses in her junior year.
Mm.
So she got a job first semester. She was the first person on her block to get a job, basically, and she pretty well picked where she wanted to go.
Great.
And so she's basically, but she also teaches yoga. I said, you're doing yoga teacher training? Really? Why? I mean, I knew she did yoga. I knew she was athletic. She did spin, and she taught spin and yoga. But you want to teach yoga? I said. She says, Mom, I'm a healer too. I just don't do it your way.
I love it.
I'm like, really? Really? So I called up a girlfriend of hers that I know. I said, did you know that Laura's a healer? She said, oh, definitely. And she gave me some examples of how Laura had really helped her out.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, I never realized.
Lovely.
So,
what about your family's spiritual, religious orientation when you were growing up?
Well, we're Reformed Jews, so social justice is a big thing. And I remember being a little kid in a stroller and going on Ban the Bomb marches. We went around the White House. I met Dr. Spock.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. My parents were very politically active, and they're light workers also. My mother basically was she was the director of continuing education at the School of Applied Social Sciences at Case Western Reserve. In other words, she was a social worker, and she was the director of continuing education. So it was her job to bring in innovative methods and stretch the boundaries of social work. She invited me in to do an NLP seminar, right? So she was always cutting edge in her field. My father did community development, and he also did parks and recreation development to make parks and recreation more available to people. So they're light workers, and they're strong on community service, strong on social justice. So you definitely see that in my work and my philosophies.
Yeah. A much larger percentage of the 60 visionary scientists have Reformed Jewish background than is the percentage of American or British population. So do you think it's because of that emphasis on learning and education, or why would there be an unrepresentative number of Reformed Jewish
Oh, yes, I
background?
definitely think Jewish values. Absolutely. Social justice, improving the world. Big.
And education's valued.
Education, absolutely.
Yeah. And we, like a lot of Asian Americans, they value education, but they don't value going against the grain or being a rabble rouser necessarily.
Yeah, that's too bad. They're pretty much socially controlled.
What do you do for fun in the face of all this learning and work and family that you do?
Well, my husband and I go ballroom dancing every Friday night.
I'm a ballroom dancer. What's your favorite?
We dance the hustle.
Ah, yeah.
How about you?
I would say my favorite is West Coast. Some of my dances are on my YouTube channel.
Oh, how
You'll
fun
have
is
to look.
that? Well, we do a little bit of swing,
Yeah.
but we don't do West Coast swing. That's more challenging.
But that's what's fun about it.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it is more challenging.
Yeah, so that's why we do the hustle. That's a lot of motion there.
Yeah.
And every week, every Saturday night, we go out on a date. I like to go to musicals. I like to go to movies. We go to movies. In the summertime, we live in Boston, so we go to the Cape, and we go to the College Light Opera Company, and it's every week they do a different performance, and it's college students who come out for a educational program for the summer and an orchestra, and they put on a different musical. So we just drive down there,
Fun.
and we go to the musicals. We like to travel. In the winter, we like to travel to some place warm. So we like to go to Hawaii or Disney World, or although my daughter says she's gone to Disney World so many times she's never going to go there again. We dragged her,
Poor girl.
Poor girl, God, roughly. Go to the Caribbean. So we like to go someplace warm. We travel to Paris a lot because Terry's family's there, so we meet them in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Have you written books? I know you've written a lot of articles. Have you written books about your method?
Not really. I have a bunch of manuals. I have thousands of pages of manuals. I wrote a chapter in a couple of books.
Yeah.
I just haven't sat down and put it all together into one book, but I could compile really all of my newsletter articles and chapters into a book.
I think that would be a good contribution.
I'm getting it together.
I'll edit for you.
Oh, thank you. The thing is, it's much more fun for me to work with live people than it is to sit there in a room by myself and write.
Do you know your Myers-Briggs, Kiersey, and Bates? You must be, I'll tell you, you're extroverted, intuitive, feeling. You're probably a J. Have you taken it? I sent you the link. Do take it, but I think you're an ENFJ.
Okay.
And we'll see.
Sure.
Do you like open options or do you like structured? Do you like to write things, click off on a list, I get this, and this, or would you rather not?
Yeah, I'm procedural.
I guarantee you're an ENFJ. Just a few more questions. In the face of climate change, increasing number of autocrats, growing economic inequality, the planet, it's not a very encouraging picture. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about our future as a species?
No, I'm really optimistic because, again, I'm tracking the overtangles. And so I'm looking at 5,000 years of history. So I'm taking a very long view. And, I have a business associate that I've brought on recently to help me expand the training business so I can train more people to do this. And he asked me questions that I hadn't really thought of. He asked me point blank, what is the problem that HBLU was created to solve? And I said, it's here to eliminate unnecessary suffering. And he said, yes, but beyond that, what HBLU actually does is it raises consciousness. And that's the truth. And if you look at what causes suffering, it's unconsciousness.
Right.
People are not consciously aware that they have an unconscious mind. I mean, I've been there and done that. They don't know that they have a body that can talk to them and is telling them things. They don't realize they have a soul. They don't understand they have a destiny. They get off track. They're misaligned. And they don't realize that they're connected with source and that they're part of the flow. And so it's really the disconnect from consciousness that causes this unnecessary suffering. So again, just muscle testing and telling people's conscious minds to talk to their soul, just that opens a world, right? And then really coming to a higher consciousness about, oh, this isn't your identity. This is a damage pattern. You're not your damage. This needs to be healed. So I tell people that their conscious mind's job is to be Sherlock Holmes, and I'm Watson, as in Holmes and Watson. And the attitude is inquiring minds want to know what's going on in the inner levels, right? So this is HBLU Mystery Theater. And then I tell the conscious mind it's your job to ask the questions and send them down into the body and talk to the soul so we can find out what the problem is. We'll use my menu of patterns, we'll use your guesses, and we'll go in together and we'll figure out what's going on. And then I have a really good menu of techniques, and you have techniques, and we're going to combine our menus. And so when we find the part of you that's injured, your conscious mind will turn into Santa Claus. And you'll go down the chimney into this area of your body where this poor part of you is suffering, and you'll say, oh, here I am, honey, I'm here to help. And the part says, oh, thank you, Santa. And you open up your bag of protocols and techniques. You take out just the right thing. You treat that part, you heal it, it releases. It feels so much, oh, thank you, Santa, I feel so much better. Oh, you're welcome, kid. And thank you for the milk and cookies, and then back out the chimney. Right? So again, people fall into their damage. I go like this, higher consciousness, and they come out of it, and they go, oh, yes, it's a pattern, and they don't take it personally. I'm like, come on out of that. We're going to treat this now. Oh, yes. So again, higher consciousness. And when you look at what these other people are doing that you are interviewing, they're about higher consciousness, right? So really, if we lived in higher consciousness, if we didn't take things personally, if we understood that we're not our damage patterns, if we had the right tools and techniques to actually clear this energy out of us so that we could align all our levels and move forward easily and gracefully and manifest cleanly, right, the world would be a hugely better place. So really, just even saying, I'm going to teach your conscious mind how to talk to your soul. Bang.
It's powerful.
Right. Powerful. And then teaching people you're a multi-level being, and we're going to find the damage patterns. We're going to use techniques to release the energy. Just the basics of the philosophy of HBLU just raises consciousness.
But we have maybe 11 years to turn around the climate change problems. Are we going to have enough raise in consciousness to turn that around?
Well, if you look at the really big picture, I don't know if you've talked to Mother Earth, but she's a person. Have you ever communicated with her?
One of the scientists, Jude Curran, is writing a book about that, about Gaia, and talks to her. Yeah. But I haven't really talked to Gaia.
All right. Well, she shows up and talks to me periodically.
Wonderful.
And she told me one time, I'm a person, not just an energy. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Anyway, I think that the Earth is a being, and basically, if we're too pesky, it'll just kill us off, and she'll go on.
Like fleas.
She'll go, yeah, right? Exactly, like fleas, and then she'll go on and survive with a different population of animals and a different terrain, so the Earth will survive without us. So there you have it. So we kill ourselves off, that's on us. The Earth will survive.
I just talked to John Ryan, who's MD and
I know, John.
Yeah, I know you do. And he thinks the Syrians, as in the star Sirius, are
Mhm.
helping us. Do you get that kind of download of information that we're being helped?
No, I don't get information from the stars. I hear angels, I hear guides. It's a rule that every human being has a minimum of one guardian angel and one guide per lifetime minimum. So I've been talking to mine consciously for probably 30 years, and they talk to me, and people come in with and once in a while Mother Earth shows up, once in a while Jesus walks into my office. I've seen Mother Mary show up. So they come and talk to me, and they come and help me do the healing work with that particular client.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of, I guess I get the local entities. I don't get the cosmic entities. What can I tell you?
Do they take form? Like, how do you know it's Jesus or Angel Michael or whoever it is?
Because it looks like them. Yeah.
And are they telling you it's going to be okay, or do they not talk about?
They don't talk about the earth.
Yeah.
Nobody's been talking to me about the earth.
What else would you like people to know about the work that you do? If they want to do a training or if they want to do a session with you, how would they do that?
Well, they can go to my website and read about my work, and it's www.hblu.org, Healing from the Body Level Up, hblu.org. They can email me at judith@hblu.org or info@hblu.org, and they can have a 15-minute free consult with me if they want to do some work. And I train people. My next one is coming up in January. I'll tell you when that is.
And
January.
People can work remotely with you, like on Skype or the phone or something,
Yes,
right?
I work by Skype, by phone, by Zoom. Yeah. Again, they do a standing tilt, and they tell me what's going on. So January 28th to February 1st, 2020 is my next Module 1 training.
Where is that?
Here in Needham, in my office. Very nice. And that one, that one teaches boundaries, which we talked about earlier, and it teaches how to clear trauma, and also how to eliminate PTSD, because one of the findings that I made several years ago was I figured out the pattern of PTSD, and now we can heal it in 1 to 6 sessions.
Wow.
And I actually published that with a 1.5-year follow-up. I published 2 papers on some cases that I did using that protocol, and it's reproducible, and my colleagues are doing that. So just Module 1 is trauma, PTSD, and boundaries.
Wow.
Straight up.
And is the PTSD procedure tapping?
Well, so let's back this up for a minute. It's really important to understand the structure of a damage pattern. It's not really so much the technique, it's the structure. So let me give you an example, because this is really important.
Please.
Let's look at a phobia. A phobia is a 1-sentence structure with 2 clauses. The first clause is, I'm afraid of something. The second one is because, and the ending is death, eternal torment, or rejection. So, for example, I'm afraid to feel anger because I will kill somebody. Okay, so we got death in there. If you say, I'm afraid to feel anger because I'll hurt somebody, it doesn't clear, because it's not extreme enough. A phobia is life and death because it's fight or flight reaction. So you have to know structure. So I've had colleagues who've had a blocked energy field caused by a phobia for years. These are trained energy psychology professionals who could not unblock themselves because they couldn't get the edge of the phobia named properly. They put it up, they tapped it, it didn't clear. I said to them, you didn't hit the edge. You didn't get to the worst case scenario. I helped them get that last edge on the languaging. Bang, they cleared it.
Mm.
So you have to understand structure. You can't just throw tapping at stuff. Another example is trauma. So let's say you have a trauma. Let's say you have a loss trauma. Let's say, for example, I had a woman who, her husband announced at breakfast one day that he was leaving her for the woman he was carpooling with. And by the way, they had 2 young sons, so he was going to just leave her. And she came into work that day. She was working in the same lab that I was, and she was shell-shocked. And so she started drinking after that. And then she dropped out of her master's degree program and got a job doing biological, nutritional, or drug sales or something like that. But I kept in touch with her. So it turns out that when you have a trauma, you have shock and fear, like that moment of initial shock. Then you have anger and rage. You have sadness and sorrow. And you have hurt and pain. You have to treat all 4 of those. You just can't just treat the shock and think you cleared the trauma.
That makes sense.
You have to check every single line, or what you don't treat, they still have. Then we get into it's my fault because, and you have to fill in the blank. It's other people's fault because, and it's God's fault because. And you have to treat that. And if you don't, then they still have it. And then we get into, let's say, the feeling of emptiness because you've lost something. So you feel empty. It's usually in your heart or your stomach. And what happens is people get a sensation, which is a feeling in the body, and they don't realize that it's not a physical sensation. It's an emotional sensation. So then they start to eat or drink to fill this void, but it's not a physical hunger. And then they gain weight, or they get drunk or something and get, make their body sick because they're trying to use the wrong technique for the pattern. Right? Alcohol is not the right technique for clearing the feeling of emptiness. And if you don't ask, if you don't understand the structure, you don't ask for a feeling of emptiness, they might not tell you. Then they still drink. So you tapped on them. They don't feel shocked anymore. They're still drinking. What did you miss? And then we have the optional section. In the optional section, we have other emotions like bitterness and hate, loneliness, disappointment. Then you have other limiting beliefs, depending on the individual. You can have, and then here's one of my favorites. It's called a dead part. A dead part.
You just numb out.
Yes, but people don't realize they have a dead part because it doesn't talk.
It's numb, yeah.
It's numb. So you have to muscle test and ask, is there any part of you that feels, that's it, I'm already dead because of this trauma? Or do you have a dead part associated with this trauma? If you don't ask, you won't find it. And then there's this very funny interaction I had with somebody. I said, where in your body is the dead part? She said, I don't feel anything. I go, that's right. Where's the non-feeling feeling? Oh, right here, she says and points. Right? So again, if you don't know the structure and you don't ask, then you won't clear it and it won't be done. So it's really not so much the technique. I mean, on any line of trauma, you can use tapping, but you could use TAPAS acupressure technique. You could use unwinding frontal occipital holding. You could use reversal and conflict tapping, temporal tap. Right? You could use Hui and EMDR. It doesn't matter. Whatever they choose, the thing is you have to combine the structure with the technique. So that's what HBLU does. It understands the structure and the pattern, and it maps out the protocol step by step. Check for this, check for this, check for this, check. This is my list. My lovingly collected list. You check for everything, and then you know you got it. And the interesting thing is, if you just clear the shock and fear from a trauma, and then you muscle test, are you 100% clear to this trauma? It'll say yes, but it won't be true. Because it'll turn out you still have anger and rage, and you have a dead part.
Right.
And you still have, so you have to understand structure, and you have to know that you can't ask that question because you'll get a false answer.
That makes sense.
So basically, I teach people the structure of trauma, loss and violence, which you can use for physical injury, and then PTSD is a layered structure. It has the basic loss and violence in it, except that it's a threshold trauma because it's caused by a history of repeated traumas that are stacked up. It's not just one trauma. And you can't just go treat one trauma. You have to treat. All right, so let me tell you the secret of this. Do you want to know the secret?
Yes, definitely.
All right. So PTSD, you have a series of traumas over time that build up in your body as stored stress.
Yes.
And you don't know how to tap. Most people in this country, even though it's been out for 30 some years, still don't know that you can tap out trauma from your body.
Right.
Ridiculous. So it builds up, builds up, builds up. At some point, say right here at my wrist, you experience one too many examples of this trauma, the straw that breaks the camel's back, and your nervous system can't take it anymore, and bang, you go over threshold. At this point, within 24 to 72 hours, right there, your body melts down, and you start having PTSD symptoms, insomnia, flashbacks, tremors, panic, anxiety, depression, addictions, right? All the symptoms come, headaches, learning disabilities. All of a sudden, your whole nervous system is screwed up. Now, right here, because you went over threshold, you get this surge of trauma, like a tsunami, like a surge, like domino effect, like when it comes up. And there's a protective mechanism in the unconscious mind that's called the blocking mechanism. You've heard of blocked memories of sexual abuse? There's a blocking mechanism. Newsflash, it's in the unconscious mind. And it throws a circuit breaker and puts a block right here between the body memory of trauma and your conscious mind. So now you can't consciously remember, all the crap that's happened. You have some idea, but not in detail. And you can't consciously go there because now you have this phobic block right here. And if some well-meaning therapist who doesn't understand structure tries to get you to access a memory that's beneath the block, it will re-traumatize you. It can blow you up and re-traumatize you, which is why some people have therapy trauma. They went for therapy, some memory popped up and blew them up, and then they didn't know how to treat it, and they walked out feeling like they were in a nightmare and they're never going back. So I've had people with therapy trauma, unfortunately. But again, you have to understand structure. So here we go. The trick. You want to know the trick?
Yes.
We don't treat this. We treat the blocking part.
Oh, interesting.
So I asked the person, we name the title of the history trauma. Early childhood neglect and abuse, history trauma. You know what they experience on a daily basis. Military, history trauma. Cancer treatment, history trauma. Day after day after day of trauma, right?
Yes.
Mentally ill family, history trauma. Just by the title, you know what they endured.
Yes.
So let's say we're doing mentally ill family history trauma. Okay, so where in your body is the blocking part, I ask. And they'll muscle test for it. Where's the party that can't bear to think about that stretch of history, is in fact resistant? Where's the resistant part? And they'll say, oh, it's in my stomach or my heart or my head or my throat or my neck or, my toch, I swear. And I'll say, okay, great. We're just going to talk to the blocking part. So they're like, okay, great. So I get my sweet voice on and I say, oh, blocking part. And I look at it. When you think about that stretch of history, do you have any shock and fear? Right, so now I start on the trauma outline, except I'm clearing the blocking part.
Mm-hmm.
And so the blocking part says, yes, I feel shock and fear. And so we muscle test where in your body is the blocking part, shock and fear. Okay, my heart. Great. And what technique do you want to use? I have a menu of 10 techniques just in Module 1. It could be tapping. It could be frontal occipital holding. It could be TAT. It could be Hui. It could be, right? So they muscle test. They want to use that technique. We use the technique. I say, how do you feel now in your chest? Oh, I feel so much better. We give the next line. Oh, blocking part, I say sweetly. You know, when you think about that stretch of history, do you have any anger or rage? Oh, yes, I do. Well, is that the next thing we need to treat? Yes. Well, where is that in your body? In my stomach. Great. What technique do you want to use? Menu. Then we treat that. Okay, how's your stomach feel now? Good. Okay. Oh, blocking part, I say sweetly. Do you have any hurt or pain when you think about this stretch of history? Oh, yes, I do. Well, is that the... So layer after layer after layer. Well, it turns out that as we treat the trauma outline for the blocking part, one layer at a time, by the time we're done, and we've gotten down to all the optionals and the dead parts and the, anticipatory phobias and whatnot, all of the trauma memory, all the trauma energy that was in the body here has drained out spontaneously.
Wow.
Without ever having to go there.
Wow.
So in one session, just clearing the trauma from the blocking part drains all of those years of trauma memory in the body right out the floor.
Wow.
And they go home that night and they sleep and they quit drinking. They lose their craving for alcohol and their brains turn back on and they feel happy and the depression lifts. No more panic attack, nothing. It all drains out. Now, if they have, 6 or 7 or 8 versions of history trauma, then it can take up to 6 sessions because we do, but they cross clear. So usually 3 sessions will clear it. Depends on how many versions. And guess what?
What?
Let's say somebody has Holocaust history trauma.
Yeah.
They didn't experience the Holocaust,
Right.
But their grandparents did.
Right.
And you know what happens is people say they won't talk about it. Yeah, so guess what? It gets passed down to the generations. So let's say I have somebody who has Holocaust history trauma. So I ask, in addition to this lifetime, do you have any trauma from your mother's side of the family in this stack, in this sequence? Yes, I do. Well, how many generations back? Well, 2 generations back on your mother's side. What about your father's side? What about past lives? So in this history, you can have not just what you endured in this lifetime, but you can carry stuff from past lives and your ancestry all stored in your little body here.
Yeah, I see that.
And so, I just ask where it is, and then we clear the blocking part, and it all drains. The historical, the ancestral, the past life, it all drains out just by treating this part right here.
And the blocking part, you get at it by locating it where it centers in the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a geographical something you can move. How interesting.
Yep.
I think that's unique to you. Do you think that you discovered that?
I did discover that.
Yeah, it's good.
Mm-hmm. I've made a lot of original discoveries. The whole trauma structure is an original discovery of mine. Right? My original research. So that's what my, 6 levels are, all original research.
I think you need to write a book, Judith.
I do. I do. There's no question. Well, I actually have one 3/4 written. It's been in my computer for years. I just need to finish editing it. All right. I guess that'll be my 2020 New Year's resolution.
We talked before about how do you protect yourself from taking on some of this pain and anger and negativity.
Yes. I definitely wanted to show you this. I learned this from Mary Louise Mueller. This is called the boundary tap. And what you do is you think about a situation or a context where something gets to you. And here's how I visualize this. I visualize this as I'm a cell. Here's the nucleus, and then my energy field, arm's length, is my energy field. And then the edges of my energy field are my boundaries. So here's the nucleus, and here's the cell cytoplasm, protoplasm as it were, and then here's the membrane.
Right.
And in a cell, the membrane is selective. It opens and closes depending on what you need and what you want to put out.
Through the cell receptors.
Right, exactly. Receptors and channels. So if you have a puncture in your membrane, then stuff floods in and you flood out and it's crap. Okay, so basically I pay attention to, am I overreaching myself and popping my own bubble? Or is something getting to me that shouldn't be getting to me that's not personal? And then I name it, and then I boundary it. So for example, I had to boundary every negative emotion, right? So I had to install 100% boundaries with people's anger and their grief and their sadness and their fear. And I had to boundary every single emotion separately. So what I would do is I'd tune into that memory where somebody blasted me with their anger, and I'm thinking, okay, this is not good. I feel polluted. And then I sit down, I go, I muscle test, do I need to install 100% anger boundaries? Yes. And so then I start tapping on my sternum. And my intention is to install the boundaries with people's anger. So I can choose to take it in or not. I can choose to express mine in certain ways. So I'm not going to blast people. I'm not going to get taken over. I'm going to be me having a feeling rather than me becoming a feeling. That's boundaries with my own emotion. Or if they're angry, just hold space for them but not take it in. So I do this. This sets the boundary. But if I did absorb something that's toxic to me, that's not mine, I don't want it, it's not good for myself, then I just use my intuition. I feather up, and then back out like this. And I just flick it out. Not turning away from you. So boundary. So I set 100% boundaries with every single emotion. I set 100% boundaries with every one of my psychic abilities. So that I turn it on when I want to, and I turn it off when I don't want to. And I don't get flooded with people's unconscious minds talking to me. I set 100% boundaries with people who this and that. Oh, I set 100% boundaries with people's emergencies. Mm. As a therapist, I have a schedule and people call in and make appointments. But sometimes I'll have somebody call in, oh my God, it's an emergency. It's an emergency. You have to see me tomorrow. And I'm like, well, how long is the problem going on? Oh, 3 weeks. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have anything for tomorrow. You're going to have to wait till, Friday. Don't do anything rash till Friday, right? Or start tapping on yourself to keep yourself calm until I can get you in on Friday. So, So, yeah, I'm not going to jump because they, and I have 100% responsibility boundaries. Whose responsibility is your life? Yours or mine? Right? Because as healers, we sometimes get overly responsible. That's not good. Right? And then I have 100% physical boundaries and 100% energetic boundaries. And I boundaried every one of my senses. Visual boundaries, auditory boundaries, kinesthetic boundaries.
And one time works?
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
Yep, takes about 3 minutes. So one of the funniest boundaries I ever did was I set 100% boundaries with people who are not interested in learning anything from me. So, people would ask me questions. I would start talking about this kind of work. They'd glaze over. I didn't take it personally. I'm like, well, they're not interested in learning anything from me. Okay. I'd stop talking about it and change the subject, and it was all very smooth.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. People are evolved at a certain level of understanding, and that's where they are.
Yeah. And then I had a funny one. I had a client, I was getting her happily married, and she went out on a date and did something so outrageously bad that I was actually shocked. And I felt genuinely angry with her. And my first thought was, didn't your mother ever teach you anything? Fortunately, I didn't react to that. I just noticed my reaction. And I sat forward and I said, well, obviously we need to figure out what caused you to do that. So stand up and let's go find the pattern, which is, what I usually do. But then I went home and checked in, what had upset me. And my thought was, oh my God, now I'm going to have to be her mother, because obviously her mother did not teach her how to behave. But then I thought to myself, but no, I'm not her mother, and I'm not going to be her mother. I'm her healer. And of course, I acted out the appropriate healing, because I had 90% boundaries. I just had a 10% gap. But so it took me about 20 minutes to name the boundary, and it was, I needed to set 100% boundaries with people whose mothers are incompetent. And it took me 20 minutes to get the word incompetent, because it had to be just the right word. And then I did 3 minutes of boundary tapping, and I'm like, okay, fine, your mother's incompetent, but what are we going to do? I'm not going to be your mother. Right?
Right.
So we're going to install an internal mother that works for you. We're going to use that protocol.
Perfect.
But I'm not going to be it. So yeah, very interesting boundaries. Right? You have to have political boundaries. You have to boundaries with the TV. Right? Television boundaries. Yeah. Now, if you're an Enneagram 2 or an Enneagram 9, you tend to break your own boundaries from the inside because you overreach to help people. So for the 2s and the 9s, until you upgrade that layer of code, they tend to break their boundaries within 6 to 18 months, but they can reinstall them by tapping again. So it holds. Oh, the only thing that will break a boundary besides bursting it from the inside out to overhelp people is if you have trauma. Something traumatizes you, it'll break a boundary. But then you tap out the trauma using the structure combined with techniques, and the boundary resets.
Got it.
Automatically.
Well, I wonder why the paraplegic guy that was in my Mind Power workshop was so painful for me. I guess it was just because it was painful for them. I mean, ordinarily, yeah. I'm not going to be reactive, but it definitely stayed with me. Well,
you might check to see if you have 100% boundaries, and it has to be, remember, in healing from the body level up, we check the body level, the unconscious level, the conscious level, and the soul level. And I also check the etheric and unknown levels, because I check the external energy field also. So you have to install the boundaries. They have to be 100% at every level, otherwise you get leakage. So you might be okay with pain in general, but you might not have 100% boundaries at a particular level on that kind of pain. Or you can muscle test and ask how you want to name that. Or you may need to install 100% boundaries with tragedy, which is different.
I think it had to do, he's not in pain, but he's so limited. So I think it has something to do with feeling so powerless.
Yeah, so you would install 100% boundaries with people who are powerless.
Yeah.
Or 100% boundaries with powerlessness.
Right. Got it.
Or 100% boundaries with people who are trapped in paralyzed bodies.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to have to muscle test the title of the boundary. Again, 20 minutes worth of guessing till you get it exactly, and then you install it.
Got it. Great.
Right? Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much. This has been so informative. I'm so glad that you made time to do this and going to be part of the book.
Well, thank you for doing this. Right? I mean, the word needs to get out there. People need to wake up.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And really, really, people do not need to suffer as much as they do. And there are very simple techniques that people can use if they only knew about them to alleviate a whole lot of their suffering. Now, I'm a very democratic person, so I'm about empowering people. So I'm like, oh, here, I'll teach you a technique and you go use it and you'll be fine. So I had to admit that for the simple things, they can treat themselves. And there's a lot of simple things out there that people need to treat themselves for, and it'll keep their lives a whole lot more comfortable. But there are these more advanced patterns with structure that do need a professional. So if somebody has PTSD, I'm like, don't treat this at home. Come to somebody that I've trained and let them take you through the structure and treat it.
Got it.
And if you're going to do a personality structure, do it with somebody else who's trained, because they're such large energies that you can't hold consciousness without being pulled in unless there's somebody else there to hold space and understand the structure.
Mm. Got it.
Because you really believe that's who you are, and it's not. So to really get your consciousness up out of that requires somebody who can really hold space and keep reminding you.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, my dear. We will be in touch. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Keep up the good work.
You too.